Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Get in the Herd After Hours, a recovery podcast from the McShin Foundation. I'm your host, Alex Bond. I'm a peer leader and recovery coach, administrative assistant, what have you, at the McShin Foundation, as well as a house leader, and even more importantly, a person in recovery from substance use disorder. Here, I have Mike and Richard with us. So Melissa came down, got sick. I hope she feels better in the future, but it did give us the opportunity to talk with Richard here instead. Very thankful he's stepping in. How you guys doing?
Good. Great, man. Thanks for having us, man.
Awesome. Amped to have you guys on. So, Mike, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Well, yeah, I'm Mike Todd. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and you know, that's allowed me to be a father and a grandfather of 7 kids, and I'm also founder and executive director of Freedom Recovery Center. And it's a great night to be in the herd with Rich Jones. I hate it Melissa couldn't show up, but hey.
Sometimes you ask for rain and you get snow. Rich, how's it going, man? Why don't you introduce yourself, my friend?
I am not Melissa. So I was watching that intro and I was like, people are going to be sorely disappointed once they actually get to see who it is. I'm Rich Jones. I'm a person in long-term recovery myself, recovery from an opioid use disorder and an alcohol use disorder for 20 years. I'm also the CEO of Favor Greenville, Faces and Voices of Recovery in Greenville, South Carolina. And I run a technology company called U-Turn, which we do like online educational videos in both mental health and substance use, stress management, those type of things for the corporate environment. So, recovery is giving my life back, but also I never thought I would be doing this type of thing ever in my life. This is not what I thought I would be doing. You know, back in the day, I didn't think I would be a therapist, a coach, so on and so forth. So not only is it giving me my life back, but it's opened up a world to me that I didn't really know was there, you know?
No, that's wild. I actually just want to ask, is the video aspect of it something that you've done pre-pandemic, or is it something that's actually developed out of the pandemic? I know this podcast personally wouldn't be where it's at if it weren't for the pandemic. So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. The digital health movement has definitely moved our agenda along, but we started it as a social enterprise to try to help fund Favor Greenville. Favor Greenville is a recovery community organization. And how do I want to say this? And there's not a lot of funding necessarily like flowing through the streets of South Carolina. So it's a social enterprise, has a dedicated pledge back to Favor Greenville. So that's why we started this process. What we found was the demand just for straight educational material took on a life of its own. We didn't necessarily anticipate this much attention. And I'll be honest, I know this is a substance use disorder recovery show, but it's real strong on the mental health end. There's a lot of folks, looking for stuff about stress, especially the word stress. That seems to be the biggest thing, So to answer your question, it started before the pandemic, but it definitely changed once the pandemic hit.
No, that's awesome. And Mike, can you explain exactly what the Freedom Recovery Center is?
Yeah, so Freedom Recovery Center, it's a community program, but it provides housing also. We started out my wife and I cleaned up a defunct halfway house back in 2011. So just to kind of ride on what I had no idea that my life would be taking this on. And we found a building and we bought that in 2014, and we house about 25 guys. But we started out doing just regular recovery housing. We would bring guys in from detox, bring guys in from treatment, kind of the same thing you guys do at McShin, probably similar.
Mm-hmm.
They'd pay their program fees. We helped them get jobs and so forth. But lately, in the last probably year and a half, 2 years, we found some gaps in the community. And some of those gaps are that, like with the Drug and Alcohol Commission, like Phoenix Center, for example, and some of the hospital here, that there are indigent guys that are out there that they don't have transportation, they don't have a roof over their head. How the heck are they going to get the treatment? How are they going to get the medication that they need? So that's something that we've stepped in the last, really kind of strong in the last year or so. And then as we start to get them through their 6 to 8 weeks of treatment and their medication or whatever it takes to get them stable, then we can kind of move them on into recovery housing or, into recovery housing somewhere else. But we've kind of focused in lately on just helping indigent guys get through treatment. There was a huge need for that.
Mm-hmm. That's very compassionate of you. I actually, my little brother was born in Charleston, South Carolina. I lived there when I was I think maybe 5 to 7 or something like that. Yeah. And I visited later down the road, and I remember it being a little different than I remember. It was a lot cleaner and nicer and preppier, and everyone was completely beautiful, but also very nice and not stodgy at the exact same time. I don't know. Is that is that kind of a similar thing with Greenville? Because that's stuff that's above the surface, but I can imagine I do remember there were pockets in South Carolina where there was some kind of rampant homelessness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, absolutely.
You want that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really, it's been a passion, and I've worked with Rich on this. We've done a lot of work together, and my wife just laughs when we're on. She can tell when we're on the phone together, but yeah, absolutely. Man, what do you do, right, with that kid that's in the tent, or a guy that's in the tent, and he's 30 years old. He's had a needle in his arm since he was 15. He's living in a tent, right? And what's available to him? If we're doing harm reduction and and Rich and I both of our organizations are involved with community Narcan, but if we're passing out that Narcan and all of a sudden you got two eyes looking up at you and going, hey, I need help. Mm-hmm. What do they have? And Rich, you can get in on this in just a second, but what do they have? Okay, they got a 30 or 60 or 90-day waiting list right now to get into a state funded facility in Columbia, or they can go to the Drug and Alcohol Agency here, the county agency, and get outpatient, but they don't have a way to get there. They don't have a place to live. So treatment is so far away from them, right?
Yeah, well, I can imagine indigents aren't exactly the ones that are known to be drowning in money and financial support at the same time too. Rich?
But to answer your original question on, is there just a surface appearance and some other stuff underneath? The answer is absolutely yes. Mm-hmm. And the state is doing a lot of things really, really well. But one of the areas it needs to come forward in terms of really embracing the full spectrum of recovery and understanding this as a brain disorder, and not like the main delivery to address homelessness in South Carolina is the faith community. And that's a wonderful thing, but it's also the type of thing that if you're dealing with somebody with a substance use disorder who needs recovery, they don't also only need Jesus. And so we got some programs where you'll get kicked out for having impure thoughts and stuff like that. And so it's like, I mean, I might be exaggerating a little bit there, but we do not have a lot of resources that I would consider progressive in their thinking. And what I mean by that is willing to work with somebody who's not just willing to claim redemption, right? Like we got a lot of places where you can go if you're like, hey, yes, help. But if you got to work with somebody on medication, for example, that's tough, man. My team every day in the streets trying to find places. Nope, we can't take him. He's on meds. Nope, we can't take him. He's on meds. And then if you got a guy who's doing Suboxone, that's even more. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Mike's program's really the only one that I'm super comfortable with in terms of responding to that type of stuff. So we do have a problem with image. And you know, what we hide behind is this idea these folks don't want help. You know, they're not willing to do what they need to do. Well, come on, man. The mental illness is rampant among that community. You know, you don't have any resources. I feel like it's a punishing way to approach that particular group of people.
Yeah, and if I can
absolutely, Mike.
Yeah, man, you've got, and that's the thing, you've got more 60, 70-hour faith-based work camps, and I don't want anybody to think, listen, I'm a Christian, okay? And yes, we need to be inviting people with substance use disorder into the churches. We need to be praying for them. But this is, you talked about this today, Rich, and I had to give it the, you know, I mean, we've got more, how can I explain this? I mean, more 60, 70-hour work camps than we know what to do with. And it's really,
and we got a situation where it's still very much the mentality of Rich. It doesn't matter whether Rich likes it, Rich doesn't like it. That junkie's lucky he has a roof over his head. And so he's going to go work at the chicken farm for 70 hours a week and just suck it up. And that's just, he needs to be humble.
Because that got me clean. That's the way that he has to get clean.
Yeah,
Is that kind of the mindset?
That is way too common. And now I do want to say for the record that folks like Mike and other people, it's definitely progressing in a different direction. I've been doing it and you could see real positive momentum, but here's what's going on in that end. There's like a certain group of people in the state are like doubling down on like the my way or the highway kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And so I think that there's change coming in the housing stuff, but it's kind of like, it's at that stage where people are pushing back a little bit. Like, I don't know if it's hard to change.
Do you think that's a recovery thing, or do you think that's a geopolitical thing? I mean, I see that from my memory and the maps, South Carolina is pretty routinely conservative to my knowledge. And I've been to conferences where they say North Carolina is on like the foreground of harm reduction because they've had these needle exchanges popping up everywhere. Yeah. I mean, and Mike, do you have something to add to that?
Well, let's look at it this way. South Carolina still does not have a needle exchange. It is illegal to pass out clean needles in South Carolina. It is illegal to pass out fentanyl strips in South Carolina. It is considered drug paraphernalia. If either one of us, as you know, who do community Narcan, if we were to pass out needles or fentanyl strips, we would lose that. And I mean, I appreciate it. I love the fact that we finally got community Narcan out. But my gosh, we need to be drenching it in Narcan. We have got to have a needle exchange. We've got to get on track with harm reduction. And I will say this, we've been doing some listening sessions with South Carolina Recovery Advocacy Project. And I'm really surprised by this. We had about 30 or 40 people in a listening session. And I'm going to tell you this. South Carolina is more ready for harm reduction than we think, Rich. I really,
yeah, I think the people are for sure. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and I think one of the things, if we can get in front of like the opioid subcommittee and just get somebody like Mark Burrows or even yourself, but Mark Burrows especially, who's just great at harm reduction, or Michael Crouch, to like get in front of the opioid subcommittee and give them the facts, because they don't know. I mean, when you look at them and tell them that someone is 5 times more likely to seek treatment and help when they're treated with dignity as a drug user, when they're given Narcan, when they're given a clean needle, when they're given a fentanyl strip, they're more likely to engage with someone like Favor of Greenville or to get treatment.
Well, and I also see it as like a situation where these people and these legislators specifically are making rules about us without us having a seat at the table, simply enough. Yeah. And it sounds like, education, it obviously is important, because pure ignorance isn't going to get anything done. So education is necessary. But, furvish education, reprioritize where we are on this list, especially now with this global pandemic. Our priorities feel like they're even lower when they should be higher, where we're probably dealing with the highest amount of overdoses I could imagine in the last like hundreds of years or something like that. I know personally,
well, the last numbers from South Carolina, numbers out of South Carolina was an 800% increase in overdose deaths in the county. Now, I mean, I'm not making that up. I mean, I've never. He's spot on. It was like it's taken us from the middle of the pack to way too high on a list we don't want to be on. And there was a lot of people who came forward. Mike and I went to the press, and we definitely like beat the drum about that. And I felt like there was really good momentum. And Mike, you can say whether you agree with this, but I felt like there was really good momentum. I do feel like COVID-19 has derailed a lot of because it's just not a focus anymore. All of a sudden, like nobody really cares to talk about it. There was a lot of public attention. It was moving in the right direction, but then COVID-19 came and blew everything else to the side. And I feel like it's taken, I'll just speak for our organization. We've definitely taken on the chin with some of our opioid initiatives, like the emergency room projects. We're in 8 different emergency departments, and we just can't get in right now. And it's not like drug use has gone away. You know what I mean? It's not like, hey, I'm addicted. I'm going to put it on pause till the COVID-19's done, right? It doesn't work that way. So I kind of feel like it hit us at a tough time in terms of making some moves.
Yeah, the numbers. I'm sorry.
No, go for it, Mac.
No,
go for it, Mike.
From my understanding, the numbers were dropping a little bit, or you can say they were dropping a little bit. We don't want to go there. But now I think they're understanding that you've got 2 epidemics that are absolutely colliding. But I want to write on something that you said, Alex, a seat at the table. That was actually the biggest issue that these folks came up with in this listening session. And I want to say this: could you imagine any other group of people? Could you imagine minorities, people with disabilities, even like speaking for animals? Could you imagine legislators getting together and those folks not being at the table? I mean, my wife rescues animals. If you have legislation with animals and you're going to tell those, good luck. Okay. And we need to start being the same way, and I don't know exactly, Rich, maybe you can help me out with this.
Well, you know what they do, well, and I had this experience nationally. As a matter of fact, I've testified with John Shinholzer. He and I mean, in 2016, I testified with John, and I got real disheartened with advocacy. I'll be honest with you. I was super enthusiastic. But my last trip to Washington basically made me say, screw this. These people are just like using us. I felt like a token, to be honest with you. Like, let's parade the token addict out in front so he can tell his redemption story. And we advocated for a substantial amount of money for 4 things: recovery centers, recovery housing, collegiate recovery, and recovery high schools. And this is what really turned my stomach, man. Like, in the room, everybody was like, we're with you. like the staffers from the congressman and the congressman themselves that were there. We're with you. We're with you. And then when you leave, it went from a $222 million ask. They gave us $7 million for the whole entire nation. You couldn't even do Greenville County for $7 million.
Mm-hmm.
And so that experience, I'll be the first to say it. I haven't been an actively engaged advocate since then because I couldn't stomach it, man. And so what I said was, screw it. I'm going to do stuff like start this technology company to fund this because I do know how to start businesses. It's what I did in my previous life. And so my thought went like this: screw them. I'm just going to like try to start businesses and pay for this stuff other ways because I do not trust these people at all. So I feel like with advocacy, I got to do a better job. I got to suck it up and understand there's a process there, but I'll be straight with everybody. I got real disheartened, like 3 years ago.
I totally believe it. I mean, we talked a couple of weeks ago with a couple people who were primarily advocates, and we kind of came to the conclusion that the best way to do it is to cut out the middleman and just go straight to the source and advocate and deal on a county to county level instead of on a state or national level. And then maybe they can see, okay, these different RCOs and communities are popping up. So maybe it's more important than we gave it credit to be. And so then their
Something
mind
like
just
that,
kind of changes overnight. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's almost like, just as an example, enough states decide we want to decriminalize weed, then the nation's just like, why not? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't see why the same couldn't be done for recovery and maybe getting a little more funding. I know that when I advocated to the General Assembly this last session, we finally got past a Good Samaritan law that said if you call 911 for your buddy who's OD'd,
I heard about
you
that.
and him are both now under immunity, essentially. But, that took 5 years in itself just to get that. The most recent one was like, okay, well, the person who called can get in trouble. It was all this red tape. And even then, there was nothing in the paper about it after it passed. No one knows about it. I know people who are still having to, sadly enough, bury their friends or leave them out to dry because they don't know that law has now changed. So that even though we do all this hard work and get what we want, people don't know that we just got what we want because we're kind of still like stifled to some sort of effect.
Well, I'll let Mike speak for himself, but I'll say one more thing. It's hard work, and so I'm working my butt off trying to get the programs going and stuff. And so advocacy does get pushed to the side. But I look at like what Mike did. One of the most significant things that went on in Greenville is his creative approach, where he brings people in the house and partners with like local treatment centers and make sure. You know what I mean? Make sure that people get the treatment and stuff. And it had nothing to do with advocacy. It had to do with him inventing something. You know what I mean? And so that to me, I get real fired up when I see that type of stuff. And I don't have a lot of faith in the idea that I'm going to say something to a legislator that's going to change his mind. But I do believe in the overall idea of it. And I got to do a better job with it. I am aware of that. Sorry to interrupt you, Mike.
No, listen. I don't want to see you get discouraged, because here's the thing. I mean, if you look at what Ryan Hampton's doing,
I love that guy,
and John, and if you look at everything, what we've got to have is we've got to have people behind us, man. We've got to when you talk about creating something, we got to create like our NRA or abortion or whatever, because I mean, like in South Carolina, man, and Rich, don't you get sick and tired of like every state race? Okay, every state Senate race, every state House race, it's two guys trying to out-Christian each other.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh yeah, and there's two.
Oh, you get that? That is exactly what it is. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
They ain't gonna take your guns and abortion, and that's not going anywhere in South Carolina, right? That's not going anywhere. And at the same time, we're sending the kid with mental health issues or substance use disorder issues to a work camp. So, but no,
and nobody wants to hear about that. Nobody wants to hear about that.
Alex brought up something that was really, did you know this, Rich? In South Carolina, they passed a law to fly the flags at half staff for those that have suffered overdoses. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
They did. And
I didn't even know that.
They already did that, and we had no idea.
A group out of, hold on a second. You got the same reaction I've got. Okay, here we go. This is Rich and I. Okay, we're getting fired up. Okay, my wife's probably watching and she's getting entertained. But look, they passed a law to fly the flag at half staff. Very noble. We're going to have a walk on I think the 28th in Greenville, but
yeah,
does
I saw that. Yep.
Did anybody know a dadgum thing about it? Absolutely
No.
not. It's absolute. They did not. I'm just gonna be frank with you. I'm ticked off about it. But anyway,
how did you? I mean, I never even heard it. I can't. How did you hear it, dude?
I heard it from another state lead with Recovery Advocacy Project, Nicole Chris.
Oh, okay.
He was like, "Hey, did you know this?" And I was like, "No. If I knew it, I would have been in there fighting for it." I mean,
so it sounds like we got to go back to the drawing board with just straight up awareness. You know what I'm saying? Instead of, all right, we need to change this, that, and the third. It feels like we got to actually just go with, we're still here.
Yeah, please, yeah.
And I will tell you, for the record, that the State Drug and Alcohol Commission did approach us, and Mike's on this committee as well. And they did say, we want to support a more aggressive advocacy. Yeah. So I want to give them credit. They initiated, they basically said, everybody kind of recognizes this. So I think that is the good news. And Mike and I are on a committee that's coming together that's bringing in people from all the different disciplines. So it's not just recovery centers, it's recovery centers and recovery houses. And we have two collegiate recovery programs in South Carolina, believe it or not. So they'll be there. And the idea is to, get the voices together and try to get our act together with that. And I have a belief about advocacy, man. I feel like we need all kinds of different people in the fight, and everybody's going to have a different strength. So with advocacy, I don't see my strength is not quite as good as Mike in terms of rallying the troops. Like Mike has a political background, and he's
wait a minute.
Well, I mean, you grew up around politics, and you grew up around. You're okay with rallies and stuff like that. I'm better at organizing shit and keeping everything. You know what I mean? That part of it. So I think we got to get people on the right seat on the bus. I'm not good with a bullhorn. I don't know.
I'll pick up a bullhorn in a heartbeat, man.
Yeah.
Dude, I don't even need a bullhorn. But you're right. I mean, it's and I do want to commend our state. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, they have heard us when we've said we want a seat at the table. The boots on the ground with recovery community organizations, RCOs, recovery residences, harm reduction. The folks that are on the ground that are doing this. Like I said, the Mark Burrows and the Michael Crouches that are really, really, really doing the deal with harm reduction. I mean, they're like, we don't care. We're going to give out needles. I mean, okay, arrest us. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to be the first one up there to bail them out. I'm going 100 miles an hour. They're not going to spend 10 minutes in jail, because I believe in what.
Yeah, that's true. There would be people that rally to it.
Yeah. I mean, and they're not going to do that, but because they do know that we're going to, raise a ruckus in South Carolina.
Yeah, but there is kind of like a don't ask, don't tell vibe around needle exchange. You know what I mean? They know it's going on, but nobody's going after.
Well, yeah, I'd actually like one of y'all to answer Kelly's question. She said, "I'm not familiar with needle exchange. How does that help with harm reduction?" Like anyone who's not in recovery or doesn't know the pure benefits knows. Okay, well. So what? They just get to do their drugs now? Like what's the benefit of it specifically? If one of y'all could just speak out on that.
The main benefit is, you reduce the transmission of infectious disease, HIV, Hep C, things like that. People will share needles. That's just a fact of the matter. And then also just other infections that you can get from using dirty needles, whatever that may be. MRSA, staph infections, whatever it may be.
Hepatitis.
So people stay healthier. the other thing that people don't understand about needle exchange is also about the relationship with the person. And so the ultimate goal of needle exchange is for me to get to know Mike and not just throw needles at him and say, good luck, have a great life. So it's so misunderstood. It actually is a evidence-based model, man, like that you can meet with somebody, you're having little conversations. I mean, I'm a therapist, man. I'm going to tell you something right now. I have much more effective conversations with people outside at the smoker's pole than I do sitting, at a chair across from me, like tell me about your week type stuff. And needle exchange facilitates those type of relationships. And then hopefully what happens is you get to know people and you want the best for them. You know what I mean? So down the road, who knows how it works out?
Yeah, because if I'm going to a needle exchange, I went to a conference that explained that aspect of it, because I didn't know that like it's statistically proven that, I'm not going to talk to my family about maybe wanting to get clean. I'm not going to talk to my using buddies about getting clean. So it's statistically more likely that I'll talk to the needle exchange person about looking into a treatment center or a rehab or literally anything than almost anyone else at that point in time, because you have that established rapport.
Yeah, one of the things I've had the opportunity to do, and I've actually gone out with Tina Harris with Favor Greenville. She does outreach and she does a fantastic job. But we literally go out with the backpacks on and we go to like the hotels. I mean, like the shooting gallery hotels. And, one of the things we do is we like we gave out toilet paper. Like we just don't hand them Narcan, because you hand them Narcan and they go, whoa, I'm not down with that. And they get all, I mean, I look like a cop by now anyway. I've been clean since 90, man. I mean,
DEA.
I got that look but I go, hey man, do you need some toilet paper? And they're like, sure. And hey, while I got you, let me talk to you about Narcan. And my wife and I, we call it our little purpose program. We put together packages with like soup, socks, things like that. Because first and foremost, let me hand you this, and then let me talk to you about Narcan. Hey, and we train them right there with Narcan. I've actually, and every now and then, I mean, they look at you like, man, you really care about me. Absolutely. And I'll say this, I think maybe I've got a dream, but like if we could like have armies of people in South Carolina that could go out and do what Tina and I have been doing, and then when they look at us and say, I need to go somewhere, I got a dream, we're going to be able to send them somewhere, right? And that when they come out of that treatment center, they come out of that IOP, that we've got quality, safe, trained recovery housing for them. And then while they're in recovery housing, we have, housing, permanent housing that we can put them in. I don't know, man. I may die before this happens, but I'm not going to give up. And I think this guy has the.
Well, you got to keep moving it forward. Yeah. One of the things that, one of the ways that I've been trying to think about it is, it's not about being the one that scores the touchdown. It may not happen right now, but somebody's got to start talking about it, and somebody's got to start trying new shit. Like what I'm pretty good at, and what I feel like I'm willing to do is try like different types of programs, try to get new funding streams. You know what I mean? Like and there's a risk to that, because I could get in trouble as the CEO of the organization. What if it doesn't work out? But so I am willing to experiment with things. And one of the things that has just started to happen for me is we're starting to have some momentum with other types of organizations, not the Drug and Alcohol Commission. So for example, the Veterans Administration, a lot of interesting conversations. The rural health communities, like not the drug and alcohol providers, but the people who do healthcare in the rural communities. So another way to look at it is ask yourself, who are your partners? Does it have to be drug and alcohol organizations, or can it be just people, right? From whatever funding agency, Department of Labor. This is I partner with a national organization who sends me grants, and all of a sudden the Department of Labor got a bucket of money for opioid. Where did that come from? I thought they were there to get jobs, right? So you see what's happening? We got to look far and wide for where we can find our support.
Yeah,
And
so instead of just looking at the immediate, like, all right, those affected, it's kind of like the pockets of groups that are affected. Veterans, those who are dealing with PTSD, who are then leaning on their substance use disorder to deal with their PTSD at the exact same time.
Yep.
Yeah,
because the other thing is the state. I'll shut up after this, Mike. But the State Drug and Alcohol, the State Drug and Alcohol Commission in South Carolina, in every state too. They don't get a bunch of money. It's the Department of Mental Health gets much more money than the Drug and Alcohol Department. And
Absolutely.
so there's really truly not a bunch of money to go around at the state, at least in South Carolina. So I feel like addiction is it is the stupid stepchild of the human services world. It does not get treated fairly in terms of funding and allocation of money.
And Mike, do you want to jump in, because I actually wanted to kind of use that as a pivot, if you had any thoughts on that.
By now I was getting but here's the real quick. I think that I'm really encouraged, because the first thing we've got to start doing is we got to quit. We got to get out of the silos, man. We've got people that do really good recovery housing. We got people that do really good harm reduction. We got people that do really good recovery community organizations. We got people that do really good treatment. We got in South Carolina or wherever, we got to get all of them working together. Mm-hmm. We got to get everybody in the same room. And that's why I do commend Deotis for doing this. That's our state authority, drug and alcohol, Department of Alcohol and Other Drug Abuse Services. I am encouraged that they're getting us all in a room together to work together. Because I think I'll say this real quick. I think what happens is we don't mean to do this, but we inadvertently start competing against each other.
Sure.
And that's so not cool, man. I mean, and I get it. I'm favor Greenville.
Well, that's because they're trying to get us to fight over such a small crumb.
Yeah,
it's
here's $100 and everybody's and then we got to get together and say, and it's true. I mean, and I'll say this with Rich on here, because he knows how we've got Favor Greenville, which is a wonderful RCO. We got a nice building. We got all these trained recovery coaches, and then we got recovery residences and recovery housing that they're trying to, and which is untrained and they don't even I'm talking to guys with recovery housing lately. They've got 60 and 80 residents, and they've got one expired Narcan. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And it's the truth.
Yeah.
I literally had a guy that called me and said, I Narcaned a guy. He's alive, but I don't have any more. That was my last Narcan, and it was expired. And I'm not going to say, who it was. It's, great folks doing great work. But I was just like, dude, we got it anyway. Back to you, Alex.
It is but I completely get what you're saying. It's like people using their last dollar to feed someone else. It's just at some point something's got to give. I kind of wanted to circle back to what Rich was saying about this. We are the ugly stepchild and the stigma that's attached to us, because something else that was said earlier is the politicians who are competing to be more Christian. I think especially in a southern state like South Carolina, and this is very similar in Virginia, is the perception that politicians need to be tough on crime. And guess what? Anyone with a substance use disorder is generally a criminal. So that then feeds into, you're tough on crime, so you're tough on the criminals, and most criminals have a disorder, yada, yada, yada. You can kind of see the train that I'm getting on. And how do you prevent, say, I only have crimes that are completely in tangent with my substance use, drinking in public, drunk driving, weed charges, stuff like that. But then you also have people who have petty larceny, grand larceny, because they're stealing money to feed their addiction at the same time. So should and could a lot of these things be decriminalized to help these disenfranchised people in the future, and kind of how would that be done? If either of y'all want to jump in.
That you,
I
Rich?
mean, I would say the answer to that question is yes, decriminalization should be absolutely part of the conversation. I think it's something you have to like phase in, drug by drug, for lack of a better term. And the most obvious thing you start with is marijuana, which is already happening. And I don't know enough about different drugs and different policies and how things work to sit here and act like I'm an expert at this, but I know for sure, okay, if you're not going to decriminalize it, then you better like 100% change your approach with the prison system and with the jail system. Maybe you decriminalize certain drugs, but you also turn the system into basically a treatment system. And you make it, if you have a substance related crime, you're everybody, not just certain prisons, everybody's going through a drug treatment program while they're there. Everybody has a recovery coach while they're there. Yes. Like you could do it where you don't have to decriminalize everything. You could take some steps in between. And one of the most obvious to me is there's no reason, even from a cost effective point of view, that you could not provide a recovery presence in every nook and cranny of the criminal justice system. The reason it doesn't happen is philosophy and politics. And the reason it doesn't happen is our country is a bunch of bullshitters, and they like to say, I don't know, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, it's too late anyway. Keep it rolling.
Okay. So here's the deal. Because we want to say we think it's a disease, but this is my point. No, they don't.
Bring it.
They do not think it's a disease. And what we would be better off if they looked at us and said, no, man, we think it's like moral behavior. And when you're ready to have like your redemption, raise your hand and we'll help you. Otherwise, we don't want to hear from you, because when you lock that many people up for symptoms of a disease, there's no way in the world you can actually say you think it's a disease. See, the thing that bothers me is that type of stuff. That I would much rather have you look me in the eye and tell me how you feel about me, and tell the people around that are needing recovery how they feel, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of this freaking like, my goodness, man, like we think it's a disease, but how much would it cost to have a recovery coach or something in every system, or a few of them? Well,
I got you, though. There's a very high demand for peer recovery specialists right now, but a very low supply at the same time. The big caveat with our disease is that people might not last as long as other diseases. There's such a turnover rate that once I get a couple years clean and I finally get my wits about me, either I could die, I could go back out, or my buddy can, and then I feel like it's all for naught. And then, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it feels like there's a very high demand to put these PRSs and recovery coaches in hospitals and prisons and all these places, but there's a very low supply of that. Mike, can you touch on that?
You mean of the staff?
When are we going to stand up? When are we going to stand up and say say that we are being treated like second and third class citizens? I mean, it's almost like we're going to have a movement like the LGBTQ movement, the AIDS movement. We've got it. When are we going to have our watershed moment, man? Like, when's Bill Clinton, like that guy that said, when Bill Clinton was making that speech and said, what about the AIDS crisis? And Bill Clinton turned around and said, I feel your pain. Like, we got to get out here. I mean, seriously, and I'll give you an example. This is an example. I contacted my state senator, and I don't give a crap. I mean, I'll tell you, I contacted him about something. First, I mentioned substance use. He didn't even get a hold of me, didn't even acknowledge me. When I finally spoke with him, he did not even, I'm going to tell you, he did not even know what a treatment center was. He started rattling off to me, well, you've got this faith-based place over here.
Yeah.
You've got this recovery camp over here. That's what they were.
Recovery camp.
Well, no, but hold on. He didn't know it was a recovery camp. He called it treatment. He was calling recovery houses treatment. He was calling some faith-based programs treatment. And I was like, sir, with all due respect, that's not treatment. I said, do you realize that we have one treatment center, one state-funded treatment center? And I said, do you realize in Greenville County, that we had at the time. We had 16 beds, right, Rich? 16 deep state funded or federally funded.
That state, yeah.
And now we got 10 now. That even got cut. So I mean, when you've got a state senator that doesn't even know what a treatment center is, dude, we got a problem. I mean, we've got a serious problem, and they really do they really do believe that it is a moral failure. They really do. And
but they say they think it's a disease because they know, you guys know how politically correct talk works, right? We all learn what the talking points are. And so we know that the cool thing to say right now is addiction is a disease. That's like what you're supposed to say. But your policies and your attitude and your openness to new stuff it does not indicate that you think it's a disease. You know, like needle exchange we were talking about earlier. If the world thought it was a disease, needle exchange would not be an issue at all. I mean, it would be like not an issue at all. They'd be like, heck yes, it's going to save people. But because it's scumbag junkies and we don't want to enable them, think about it. Like be careful. We will enable them. If they think that junkies need clean needles to use, like in other words, they were going to get clean if they didn't get clean needles, right? That's not how addiction works. It shows such a fundamental misunderstanding of the issue at hand. If you think, I want you guys to think about this for a minute. If you think that giving somebody a needle is enabling, you fundamentally don't understand that addiction has nothing to do with whether or not you have a needle. You follow me? It's compulsive use. It's, I'm going to chase it. It's not like, oh, I don't have a clean needle, so I'm going to go ahead and go to rehab tonight. That's what people think how it works. And there are people in positions of like authority that think that's how it works. And that's like the director of NASA thinking the world is flat. Do you follow me? Like it's the same type of fundamental flaw in knowledge. So we're not even talking to people that are speaking the same language, and they're not speaking a reality-based language. They're speaking a made-up, kind of world, for the lack of. Now, it's one thing for a layperson
buzzwords and political correctness and all that sort of stuff. I mean, people don't even still to this day know that it's substance use disorder, not substance abuse anymore. I mean, there's very small stuff that are consistently and Mike has said this numerous times, is that not only do we have to get everyone in the same room so we can be on the same page and say, okay, it's use, not abuse. I hope everyone remembers that now. Oh, you're supposed to say recovery date, not clean date, because I shouldn't be identified by the quality of my urine. I mean, and then there's people who are going to be very old school about it and say, this is the way it is. That's just the way it is. And but at the same time, you have to have the people who aren't involved also in the room, and then the room just starts to feel crowded at some point. You know what I'm saying? And I also wanted to say, Rich, that you're totally right on that. It's like, imagine if chemotherapy were illegal because I chose to smoke cigarettes.
Bam.
Absolutely. That's the total disconnect there. Is at one point you're like, you got to realize that what we do are the symptoms of our disease, not the disease in and of itself.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, could you imagine taking the guy that's had 2 or 3 heart attacks because he just can't, he doesn't exercise, or he doesn't eat right, and could you imagine us like treating him like we treat people with substance use disorders? And I remember, it had an effect on me before I found recovery. I would go into churches and they would drag me and pray, and like one church chased me around with tambourines and stuff. And again, I'm not knocking this because I'm a Christian, okay? But and what I would do is I would say, yeah, I would leave, and I'd be like, man, I'm gonna come to church and follow Jesus, and I'm well, and I would get in the car and I would use again. And the effect that had on me was, oh, okay, maybe God loves them, but God doesn't love me. And it had a profound effect on my life, man. And it's just like when we decided to work with medically assisted treatment, and I don't even like to call it medically assisted treatment, because you know what? It's treatment. That's what it's called. Yeah. That's what it should be. Like, drop the medically stuff. But I remember, having that change of heart and mind, and people like Rich and Nate Tate and Mark Burrows, and because I'm an old dude. I mean, I started coming around the rooms in '88, right? I mean, like if you're taking that stuff, you're not clean, and you sure aren't coming to my
Sure.
recovery rep. But at one point, I remember sitting down with my director and having lunch, and I said, we got to start working with these guys. And he just kind of looks at me like, did you what guys? And I said, guys on medically assisted treatment. Like, okay, like age, race, sexual identity. Like, man, we don't turn anybody away, but we turn these people away.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was because he came from old school too, right? And man, it was a tense conversation. Like this is like my director, right? I mean, he runs the place.
Wow.
And it was a tense conversation, and it took some time. And finally, I remember the day that it was almost like a, I think spiritual awakenings come from rude awakenings, right? And what had happened is I began to like lose kids. And I began, like, when you see a mother and she doesn't even look like a human being because she's so stricken with grief. And I finally said to myself, Mike, you got to open your mind up. You got to open your heart up, and you got to start. And it's like, I'm glad Rich is here, but I was looking forward to talking to Melissa, but, because she's into a lot of that evidence-based stuff. But I'm like, and I'll say this, I don't know where we're at, but real quick, what do we do with like, and I was going to ask Melissa this, like, what do we do with the kid that's on meth right now? Good luck. We'll pray for you. Hope you make it. You get maybe a few hours in the hospital, and then they put them back on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
or call me when you need bail money. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I'll be frank with you. It's personal for me because, and Rich knows this, he's met my son. My son has struggled with that. And he's now in Los Angeles on the streets, man. And he's alive. Thank God. But I've tried but like we've got to realize, man, that there's steps in medicine and science, and like we've got to be open to that. And I know the recovery community as a whole, especially like when I started taking people on treatment, medically assisted treatment, dude, I'll be frank with you, man. Some of my old buddies, I mean, they started looking at me different, so what, so, but anyway, Rich is froze up there, man. And we got him on the last minute, but,
he'll probably even out a little bit, and if Todd needs to remove him and bring him back, he will. But
yeah,
I'm curious to kind of talk more about that medically assisted piece just a little bit, because like here it's somewhat divisive, but I think the general consensus is it is its own pathway to recovery and it works. Is it a lot more divisive down there in South Carolina? It sounds like it is. I've talked to some guys who were from Arkansas and said it was also quite a divisive topic, that it was just like black and white. Some people think it's okay and some people think it's don't. There's like no gray area.
Yeah, I mean, within my fellowship that I go to, and yes, I mean, it's you're not even allowed to share sometimes. But for me,
people are prevented from sharing in meetings if they're on subs, essentially.
In some meetings, yeah.
And
that's preposterous.
Rich can jump in here. I mean, I had to come to the conclusion, and my grand sponsor, who's got 40-umpteen years clean, right? I mean, he's even looked at me and said, Mike, this way of life that you and I have in this fellowship, it's not for everybody. And that's why I appreciate what Favor of Greenville does, because here's the thing, we got to realize that there's only going to be a minute amount of people that make it to those fellowships. And you know what? There's going to be even less minute amount of people that like work through the steps. I mean, that actually do that stuff. And the fact of the matter is when somebody loses a child, they don't care about how I got in the recovery or anything. All they know is their kid is gone, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's
well, man, I had a wild experience coming to South Carolina because my perspective was very interesting. I'm from Western Pennsylvania, and I started my professional career first 12, 13 years working in Western PA, and the opioid epidemic kind of hit there before it hit Greenville. And so I went through the whole like buprenorphine, Suboxone isn't clean thing while I was there. But when I came to Greenville, I had I had worked through all the bullshit around it. You know what I mean? I had come to the conclusion. But when I got to Greenville, it was like going into a time warp, man. I swear it was like stepping back to
because you were ahead of the curve and you already had that conversation.
I totally misunderstood that because I was real wide open about it and stuff. And because I remembered in Pittsburgh, I learned how to massage the conversations with the fellowship because I got clean in Narcotics Anonymous and they hated me. You know what I mean? Like I was like, blaspheming when I said, this was okay. So but then I got to Greenville and I realized like, okay, we need to work on this. Mike, if you want to know the truth, Mike didn't like it early on. We worked, but the difference between Mike and a lot of folks is he like investigated it, if it makes sense. Like he actually came over and talked to us at Favor Greenville. A lot of people
I don't believe it until I get to see it myself type of investigative. Yeah. That's kind of how I am myself as well.
Like came over and asked questions and wanted to learn. And we wound up talking about it. He wound up moving toward a different opinion. I admire that in anybody. I say all the time, changing your mind is a rare quality. And it's a strong, it's a superpower actually, but a lot of people don't use it. But a lot of folks like to judge and say things from afar and never actually come and ask any questions and never want to find out, well, tell me more. Why would we put somebody on that? Look, I can tell you, it's very rare the person who will look at you and say, it's better off if they're dead. I'd rather them be clean and dead, than on Suboxone and alive. What they do is they avoid the actual conversation, if that makes sense. They never actually go there. Because who the heck's going to say that? Like, you have to be a pretty scummy kind of person to be like, hey, man, if they die, they die. You know what I mean? Like, there are people like that. There are people
in recovery. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And I had to come
That's
to that
pathetic, though. That's people like that I got like little time for that. Like, that's a bad person. You know what I mean? Like that, especially like somebody in a spiritual program to think like that and say stuff like that. That's a terrible person. And
pretty self-righteous, yeah.
Alex Meadress Jones. So no, and I get that because a few years ago, if you would have asked me, substance use disorder or whatever, I mean, there's one way to do it, the way I did it, and I really had to open when I started working with families and I started, with Freedom Recovery Center and then going through it with my son and everything else, I'm like, I don't give a crap how they stay alive, man. I just want them to stay alive. Like, you know what I want for my son right now? I want him to be alive. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've had him since he was 6 years old, man. And like I said, he's safe, and that's just the bottom line. And I had to just kind of like think, okay. And here's when you talk about the spiritual side of it, I mean, it's like, I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, I'll go ahead and at least ask, if you guys don't mind, do you think cannabis can be used in this medically assisted treatment way, or do you think the jury's still out on the information when it comes to something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot about that. I feel like the jury is way out yet, but I do think that like instinctually, I feel like there's probably like a lot more work that could be done there. But I feel I don't even think they've scratched the surface on actually knowing, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Whether this is and I think it'll be legalized before we even get
the ability to get to like a pharmaceutical level, I would imagine. There. I mean, Mike,
and the ultimate solution isn't going to be medically assisted marijuana.
Yeah, he's freezing up. But no, and what I was going to say real quick is like I've had to come to the realization that you don't have to come to my fellowship for me to help you. Mm-hmm. Right?
Absolutely.
I had to come to that conclusion, and I know Rich got on late, and he looks like he's in his attic or something, which is
better than the basement.
A basement or whatever. It worked out great. I called him at the last minute, and he happened to answer the phone, but now medical marijuana, I don't know. I mean, I know that, like, what about CBD? You know,
Absolutely.
where you take the THC out. And I'll say this, okay, we're on a podcast, but I hurt my back and CBD helped me. And I happened to be out in the parking lot talking about it to somebody, and another guy overheard it and just jumped all over me, you know? And I was like,
what,
really?
saying that was that
Yeah,
you weren't right to do that?
Yeah, that you know, like that, mind or mood altering. And I'm just going to be frank with you. I would get more high. I would, would be more mind and mood altering smoking a cigarette, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it got to the point I didn't want to do any opiates, and I hurt my back, and it's 3:00 in the morning, and I would take some CBD gummies and I could go to sleep.
Yeah.
And, but.
And I know of people who have said, yeah, I haven't shot heroin in 25 days, but I smoke weed every day. And if that's the way that I'm getting clean, that's the way I'm getting clean, man. I haven't shot heroin. And so it's more power to you, man. That's where I come from.
No, if your quality of life's getting better and you're alive, you know what I mean? And you're making progress, man, more power to you. I mean, because it's you're right, man. We're in the middle of a huge epidemic. We've got two epidemics colliding. It's not time for Mike to get self-righteous. And believe you me, I can be an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. You know, we don't have time for that bullshit crap. We don't, none. So, yeah.
Well, when you guys dig into, I can tell you the area that I've learned a boatload about, and I've interviewed 5 or 6 people is therapy. Way into that research and the results there for trauma, like addiction. Folks that struggle a little bit, like serious stuff. That's going to get mainstream treatment. I don't know how it could possibly not be. The results are so staggeringly positive. When you look at it, phase 3 trial, there needs to get through.
Yeah, he went.
Poor Rich. He was on a tear too. I can hear every third word.
And let me just tell you, I know him, and he lives out in Timbuktu. I will tell you that. He does. He lives out in kind of rural, and that's good for him, right?
That's part of his recovery, is getting away from the busy.
Like, he gets out of Greenville and drives to Timbuktu where he lives, and he's got umpteen kids. So. But no, yeah, this is, I mean, what a great conversation tonight, man. We got, hey, I'm excited about, mobilized recovery next week. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I'm very excited to link up with all these people, because I've seen a lot of people on doing these podcasts, and everyone's like, oh yeah, well, I'm in mobilized recovery. So now hopefully this will be a way to reconnect with everyone at the same time. I do want to say Johnny Fab has the comment of the night saying, Rich is using AOL. Get that man some 5G.
No, man,
you're on it.
He does live out, and he lives out, and like I said, that's fantastic. But no, I mean, and I'm excited about Mobilize. And I will say this, that last year I was inspired by a lady that spoke by the name of Carol McDade. He's calling me.
Put him on speaker. Tell him we're probably wrapping up right here anyway.
Hey, man, what happened? Like, we know you live out in the middle of like nowhere, man. You were on a roll. You were on a roll, and I was getting ready to like throw a chair across the room. I was getting ready to bust a window out. You remember like that time we were in your office and we turned the, you were like arguing me about medically assisted treatment, and we turned was it you or me that turned the desk over?
Both of us.
No.
I don't know what's wrong with it, dudes. I might have to check off, to tell you the truth.
No, that's good.
That's fine. We're just wrapping up right now anyway. Mike, can you just give a quick overview of what mobilized recovery is, and then we'll get you and Rich's final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, and he said he's probably got to sign off. His internet's not doing well, but no, mobilized recovery is it's getting the best, brightest, greatest recovery advocates from all over the country and it's really a grassroots movement. And I've been blessed to be involved with it in South Carolina. And I went last year, and now we've got Nicole Chris who helps with it. A lady actually that's with the school board in Charleston. And it's really cool having her because she kind of understands legislation. Like what I know, this is before your time, Alex, but what I know about like legislation, I learned on Schoolhouse Rock, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I watch a lot of. I'm just a Bill on Capitol Hill.
Yeah,
Come on.
Capitol Hill, but I got my favorite speaker last year was Carol, and I got to and I've been able to kind of started following John, and I've kind of thought about actually going out to Virginia and like checking y'all out because like I aspire to maybe kind of be that. But anyway, no, it's look forward to and here's the thing, if you didn't get to mobilize recovery, you can still get involved with the Recovery Advocacy Project. You can go to the website. I'm sorry, I don't know what the exact website is, but you can go and sign up and like start getting educated and start coming to workshops. You can get on the calls, you can get on the listening sessions. And I'm going to say this, if you're in recovery, you're worthy. You're not a second or third class citizen, man. You're worthy of your voice being heard.
That's beautiful stuff, man. And I'll say that Recovery Advocacy Project is recoveryvoices.com. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Mike, awesome work, man. I appreciate you getting Rich involved too. We just roll with the punches, just like recovery.
Yeah.
I really appreciate having you on, man. And I'm definitely looking
quick,
forward to linking up and mobilize recovery. Yeah.
Real quick, man. You're a house leader?
Yes, sir. This is my bedroom at my recovery house right now.
I want to tell you something. Listen, I want you to know something, man. A house leader is like the wheel and the cog that makes it happen. I heard that on your last podcast, I think with Jeff Breedlove, and I was like, he's a house leader. I love that. And I'll say this real quick. I know we're running out of time.
No, we're good.
Like in 1990, we didn't even know what like recovery housing was. We just like lived together. I landed with some guys in a condominium in Myrtle Beach, and the guy that was like the house leader or whatever, he had 5 years, and so fantastic. I love to see guys come through recovery housing and find their way, and doing the podcast, man. Good work.
No, I really appreciate it. It kind of fell in my lap, and I enjoy doing it. The best way to
We got
best way to give back.
Tonight, and we got a curveball tonight, but it worked out great. We got Rich and I are crazy when we get together. Okay?
I love it. We're probably gonna have to get you guys on again pretty soon. Honestly,
Absolutely.
Maybe post COVID, so we can check up on each other and how we've dealt with the stress. But Mike, I really appreciate it, man. Shout out to our producer Todd.
Thank you, Todd.
Big thanks to Rich for filling in, and Melissa. We hope you feel better. Until next time, this is Get in the Herd.
Get in the herd, man. Stay in the herd. All right.
One thing we do here, we always educate our participants. I want you to leave here after your 30, 60, 90 days, or however long you stay and leave. I want you to be educated about the disease of addiction, about substance use disorders, what you need to do to personally recover. But I want you to know why we don't have the support we should have. I want you to know where all the funding goes, what the thinking is of our culture, why we're the way we are. And just for the record, everybody put it right in. I hereby deputize each and every one of you as an ambassador to be a face and voice of recovery from here on out. You've just been deputized. You just became ambassadors of a recovery movement, an authentic recovery movement. What authentic means is about people in recovery themselves. This is our call to action.
tired of waiting, lost while I'm sitting at home. Dream of a new destination, lust for something unknown. Oh, you better leave it alone. And you know I'd rather get up and go. How long can I lie around waiting for it? Sometimes you gotta walk out the door. No limits, no ceiling, no crown. No pressure gonna hold me down. No stopping till I break every rule. No limits to what I can do. No, well, it's too far away. No border gonna stand in my way. No wall that I can't break through. No limits to what I can do.